Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Don Ma. NBC anchor Savannah Guthrie puts out another plea for the return of her mother, Nancy Guthrie, where the FBI and local authorities are with the case. Secretary of State Marco Rubio in Hungary today meeting with Prime Minister Viktor Orban. Rubio discussed the Russia-Ukraine war, China, and signed a key cooperation deal with Budapest. The Trump administration planning to transform how the U.S. sells weapons to allies, how the America First arms transfer strategy will work. The future of the Hudson Tunnel project is still in jeopardy. President Trump on what he plans to do about the project. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. says the FDA will review a petition challenging ultra-processed foods with 70% of Americans either obese or overweight. In the heart of Rome, a Renaissance palace guards its secrets. Now a museum, it unveils ancient treasuries once owned by the city's noble families. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. The FBI says there have been definitive updates in the case of Nancy Guthrie's disappearance. NBC anchor Savannah Guthrie posting once again on Instagram, pleading for her mother's return. Here's the latest.
NBC anchor Savannah Guthrie Sunday posting another video to Instagram 2 weeks after her mother Nancy Guthrie's disappearance. Savannah Guthrie once again asked whoever might have taken her mother to release her.
It's been 2 weeks since our mom was taken, and I just wanted to come on and say that we still have hope, and we still believe. And I wanted to say to whoever has her or knows where she is that it's never too late. And you're not lost or alone. And it is never too late to do the right thing. And we are here. And we believe. And we believe in the essential goodness of every human being. And it's never too late.
Investigators have so far not indicated any big break in the case, but the FBI says there have been strong definitive updates. A spokesperson for the FBI told the Epoch Times yesterday that a glove found near Guthrie's home appears to match one worn by a suspect seen in footage from the doorbell camera. The FBI says the found glove contains DNA, and they are waiting for results from forensic testing. The county sheriff's department says investigators collected DNA from Nancy Guthrie's home that doesn't belong to Guthrie or those in close contact with her. They are working to identify who it belongs to. Based on the doorbell camera footage, authorities have described the suspect as a man about 5'9" to 5'10" with an average build. The FBI also said he was wearing a 25-liter Ozark Trail Hiker backpack. The Bureau has announced a $100,000 reward for information that could lead to Nancy Guthrie's recovery or the arrest and conviction of a suspect. Guthrie has been missing from her Arizona home since January 31st. Since then, several media outlets have received alleged ransom notes from an abductor. However, despite several pleas from the family, no one has been in touch.
And we have an important update from the Pima County Sheriff's Office. They issued a statement just moments ago saying, to be clear, the Guthrie family, to include all siblings and spouses, has been cleared as possible suspects in this case. And it goes on to say the family has been nothing but cooperative and gracious and are victims in this case. But the FBI is still asking for more information concerning the case, and they can call 1-800-CALL-FBI. That's 1-800-225-5324. And tips can also be submitted online at tips.fbi.gov. Social media platform X is down for thousands of users in the US and the UK this morning. According to Down Detector, more than 23,000 incidents were reported around 8 a.m. Eastern. Down Detector tracks outages using user-submitted reports and other resources. X did not immediately respond to requests for comment. The actual number of affected users may differ from the figures shown online. Secretary of State Marco Rubio met with Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban in Budapest today. The two signed a civilian nuclear cooperation agreement backed by President Trump. NTD's Daniel Monahan has key takeaways.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio says the U.S. and Hungary are entering a golden era of mutual relations.
And not simply because of the alignment of our people, but because of the relationship that you have with the President of the United States.
Trump has endorsed Orban ahead of Hungary's April elections, praising his stance on illegal immigration. Orban and his Fidesz party are facing their most serious challenge in the April 12th vote since he retook power in 2010. Rubio also addressed the Geneva talks on the Russia-Ukraine war scheduled for tomorrow and Wednesday. The talks include Russia, Ukraine, and the United States.
We're the only nation on earth that apparently can get both sides to the table to talk. I'm not here to insult anybody, but the United Nations hasn't been able to do it. There's no other country in Europe that's been able to do it.
Rubio says the U.S. is just trying to play a role in reaching a deal if possible.
We're not seeking to impose a deal on anybody. We're not trying to force anyone to take a deal they don't want to take.
The Secretary of State says he perceives a double standard in how the peacemaking efforts of President Trump are being treated.
Usually when you're trying to end wars, the international community applauds you. This is one of the few wars I've ever seen where some people in the international community condemn you.
Rubio also addressed Trump's visit to China in April.
It's got 1 billion-something people, second largest economy in the world. They have nuclear weapons. It would be crazy. It's insane for the United States and China not to have relations and interact with one another. Now, two big countries like this, do we have differences? We absolutely do.
Secretary of State Rubio's stop in Budapest follows his visit to Slovakia yesterday, after previously attending the Munich Security Conference in Germany. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
The Secretary of State says making a deal with Iran will be difficult. During his visit to Budapest, Rubio said it's difficult because the country is led by clerics who are, quote, making theological decisions, not geopolitical ones. Take a listen.
Look, doing a deal with Iran is not easy. I said it yesterday, I'll repeat it again today. I mean, we have to understand that Iran ultimately is governed and its decisions are governed by Shia clerics, radical Shia clerics, okay? These people make policy decisions on the basis of pure theology. That's how they make their decisions. So it's hard to do a deal with Iran. We've always said it's hard, but we're going to try. That's what the president is trying. I'm not going to prejudge those talks. I'm certainly not going to negotiate with Iran here in front of the press and on the stage. Our negotiators are on their way there now. They'll have meetings. We'll see what happens.
Rubio spoke as Iran's top diplomat met with the head of the UN Nuclear Watchdog Agency in Geneva today. That's ahead of a second round of negotiations with the United States over Tehran's nuclear program. Meanwhile, over the weekend, President Trump said members of the new Board of Peace pledged more than $5 billion for the Gaza Strip. NTD's Jason Perry has the update.
Over the weekend, the Israel Defense Forces released this video of what they said were armed terrorists emerging from a tunnel near Israeli troops in the Gaza Strip. Israel said they struck 2 of those terrorists and then launched strikes on other terrorists throughout the Gaza Strip for what Israel said was in response to an alleged ceasefire violation. A man at a funeral in the Gaza Strip on Sunday, whose son was reportedly killed by an Israeli airstrike, said this about the newly established Board of Peace.
Do you believe that there is a Board of Peace? Do you believe that U.S. President Donald Trump would come to help us or defend us, the one who is supplying Israel with all sorts of deadly weapons?
However, on the same day, President Trump said in a post on Truth Social that members of the Board of Peace have pledged more than $5 billion toward reconstruction and humanitarian efforts for the Gaza Strip. This comes as Trump recently ordered a second aircraft carrier group to the Middle East amid ongoing talks with Iran over a nuclear deal. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said President Trump prefers diplomacy over military action against Iran.
Now, we're dealing with radical Shia clerics, okay? We're dealing with people who make geopolitical decisions on the basis of pure theology, and it's a complicated thing. I mean, no one's ever been able to do a successful deal with Iran, but we're going to try. Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner will be traveling. I think they're traveling right now to have important meetings, and we'll see how that turns out.
And Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said this on Sunday about a possible nuclear deal between the U.S. and Iran.
There shall be no enrichment capability, not stopping the enrichment process, but dismantle the equipment and the infrastructure that allows you to enrich in the first place.
In another development, the U.S. military said they conducted 10 strikes against more than 30 ISIS terrorist targets in Syria over the past 2 weeks. Jason Perry, NTD News.
The European Union Commissioner will travel to Washington this week to attend the Board of Peace meeting. She will take part as an observer. A spokesperson today said the Commission is not becoming a member of the Board of Peace. He added that the EU is taking part because of its long-standing commitment to implementing the ceasefire in Gaza. And the Trump administration is planning to transform how the U.S. sells arms to foreign allies and partners. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and War Secretary Pete Hegseth explaining President Trump's America First arms transfer strategy. In an op-ed on USA Today, Rubio and Hegseth say Trump's executive order helps change how weapons are produced and delivered. They argue that timeliness is key, but there are long waiting lists under today's system. The Trump administration aims to change that by designing exportability into the systems from the very beginning and proactively selling to allies based on what America needs. Rubio and Hegseth say, quote, America needs partners with complementary, not necessarily identical capabilities. They argue Trump's strategy will shorten wait times, create new manufacturing capability, and build resilience across supply chains. Joining us to discuss this is Armen Kurdian, foreign policy and national security analyst. He's also a retired U.S. Navy captain. So Armen, good afternoon. You heard what this administration wants to do just now. Could you walk us through exactly how the changes I talked about earlier that the War Secretary and State Secretary said, how will this change the U.S. And other nations in terms of selling weapons?
Good afternoon, Don. So, first of all, the United States has found itself in a place where, in the era of complex weapons, it takes a very long time from the moment you even put something on a contract to when it is actually delivered, let alone when something is developed. And these timelines have demonstrated a weakness in our acquisition workforce and our acquisition industrial base because we can expend weapons very, very quickly, but it's very, very hard to replace. We can overcome that through economic order quantities by getting our allies to purchase some of these weapons, also help having them participate in the development of some of these things, putting their requirements into some of our weapons so that we can all build one weapon that we can all use. It also makes it easier to sustain and support these kinds of weapons over the long term. Now, by bringing foreign allies into the acquisition system earlier in some of these development programs, it gives them a little bit more of a skin in the game at the same time that we continue to work with the European allies in terms of, the types of mission sets that we need to operate together, the types of operations in various parts of the world that mean we need to work together, whether it's the European theater, the Middle East, and building those common requirement sets will help facilitate the procurement and the manufacture of these weapons. But there is still some work to be done in the industrial base in order to make that happen.
Okay, so let me ask you a rather fundamental question here, Armen. Why is it that so many countries want U.S. weapons? Because Rubio and Hegseth say that U.S. weapon sales remain at an all-time high with 43% of the global market share.
Frankly, it's because as challenging as our industrial base is, the European allies have even greater challenges at the same time. The U.S. builds the best weapons. We have the best missiles. We have the best aircraft. We have the best logistics and sustainment capacities. Frankly, I think a lot of Americans need to understand that while we have a big technological edge in weaponry over our adversaries, what is the biggest game changer and what is the biggest advantage we have is our ability to sustain and support those weapons over the long term. China, Russia, even the European allies don't have the ability to sustain long-term combat operations or support our weapons as much as we do. And our system certainly isn't perfect, and a lot of weaknesses have come to light over the last several years. So that is a big reason why the allies still want to be part of a lot of our foreign military sales. Plus, at the same time, it relieves them of the development cost. And as I said, When you have more countries buying the same kind of weapon, it drives down the overall cost. And we've seen that to some degree, for example, with the F-35, or with our, armored personnel carriers, or with tanks, or even with howitzers and simpler weapons, or even vehicles. This is a truism of economics, and it's just as true in acquisition as it is in the commercial space.
So you said earlier that the U.S.'s weapons have a clear edge over other countries' weapons. How big is that edge, and do you think it's worth it for countries to wait sometimes, years apparently, before actually getting their hands on those weapons?
Well, it's a clear edge, but it's also a very expensive edge when you look at, GPS or precision navigation, when you look at, energetics, when you look at alloys and scientific technology that we put into our weapons. Uh, Maintaining that edge, submarines, it doesn't matter what aspect of warfare it is very, very expensive. But, we've seen the efficacy of U.S. weapons on the battlefield, especially when going head to head with other adversaries. And you can't really put a price maybe you can put a price on this price of a soldier or an airman or a sailor in terms of how much it actually costs to develop and train that individual. But beyond that is, of course, the intangible about human life and the amount of lives that can be saved through technology. Uh, we've seen throughout history that countries, even if they have their industrial base, I mean, this happened to Germany in the Second World War. They were still able to produce weapons at a rapid pace towards the end of that war, but they'd lost all their people. Same was true with Japan. They'd lost all their senior airmen. They lost all their experienced people. You cannot replace expertise nearly as fast as you can replace weapons. So that is something that it basically it drives the technology, because the faster you can complete a war, the faster you can complete a military objective, uh, to the extent that you're not losing some of your own forces or some of your own people, is a big component of military success on the battlefield.
So what would it mean if allies shifted to other non-U.S. suppliers for these weapons?
Well, if they did, I think they would quickly learn that perhaps that it's not in their best interest to do so, and they eventually always come back to us to work. Foreign military sales, you see FMS ingrained on all of our program offices and all the services. You see foreign representatives, even foreign military, as well, who are operating with us. Our program offices. You have representatives from other countries who are over here representing their interests at the same time. It's not to say that there may not be some times where a foreign country has a better missile. I mean, the U.S. has bought foreign equipment at the same time. We sometimes we go and say, "Hey, this works really well for us. We can this meets our requirements. The sustainment works. Maybe we have a logistics facility built in the U.S. to sustain these weapons that are built overseas, and that it actually works. So it can be a two-way street at the same time. But ultimately, a lot of these countries, you know, you might consider, well, you might want to make a political decision in terms of buying a weapon from one country vice another. But at the end of the day, you've got to support your military, and that's why they keep coming back to the U.S.
So Armin, I just want to ask you one more question. How do we shorten that wait time? Is it difficult? And how does Trump's America First arms transfer strategy, which he signed as an executive order, how does that fit into all this?
It requires a lot of things, Don. It requires investment in facilities, investment in manpower, investment in scientific technology, investment of the industrial base. There's a lot of things that we need to do. Ultimately, I like calling it the infinite dollar problem. If you say you have an infinite amount of money and I want to buy as many, say, missiles as I possibly can, or as many tanks as I possibly can, what's the next bottleneck or the or blockage in terms of how many I can actually buy? And in terms of our industrial base, our major primes, they want to know that there is actually a level demand kind of going forward. They don't like demand say I'm buying 100 this year, 100 next year, 1,000 the next year, and then 100 the next year. That doesn't work for them. So it also involves the U.S. working with those primes in order to make it easier for them to actually go and build. At the same time, reducing a lot of the overhead burden that they got to deal with. So there is a lot involved with making it happen. And right now, under this Secretary of War, uh, they are looking very hard. It is priority number one to accelerate and streamline the acquisition workforce, the acquisition industrial base, in order to make that happen.
Okay, Armin, thank you so much for speaking with us today. Very good.
Thanks, Don.
The future of the Hudson Tunnel project is still in jeopardy. President Trump today opposing the $16 billion commuter rail project linking Manhattan and New Jersey as it currently stands. In a Truth Social post, the president says the project will cost many billions of dollars more than projected or anticipated. He said it will be financially catastrophic for the region unless hard work and proper planning is done to avoid insurmountable future cost overruns. Trump's post reads, quote, "Under no circumstances will the federal government be responsible for any cost overruns, not $1. But he adds that the federal government is willing to meet to make sure cost overruns don't happen. Last week, the Trump administration released $30 million of the frozen $205 million in federal funding for the project. That came after New York and New Jersey sued to challenge Trump's previous funding freeze. Now, here's a fun fact for you. Today is actually not President's Day. The official name for the holiday is Washington's birthday. The government considered changing it, but that never happened. Despite that, it became popularly known as President's Day. Most people now consider it a time to also honor other former presidents, including Abraham Lincoln. The modern calendar puts Washington's birth on February 22nd. A 1971 law places the holiday on the third Monday of the month. A potential new milestone in America's nuclear energy landscape. The Departments of Energy and War yesterday, for the first time, transporting a nuclear microreactor by plane from California to Utah.
Powering next-generation warfare will require us to move faster than our adversaries. To build a system that doesn't just equip our warfighters to fight, but equips them to win at extraordinary speed. Today is a monumental step towards building that system.
We went 40 or 50 years without building much in the nuclear space, and from executive orders only about 12 months ago, before July 4 of this year, we will have multiple nuclear reactors critical. That's speed, that's innovation, that's the start of a nuclear renaissance.
The agencies partnered with California-based Valor Atomics to fly one of the company's Ward microreactors on a C-17 aircraft without nuclear fuel. The Department of War saying before the flight, the successful delivery and the installation of the reactor will unlock significant possibilities for the future of energy resilience and strategic independence. President Trump last May issued 4 executive orders aimed at boosting domestic nuclear deployment to meet growing energy demands for national security and AI, aimed at strengthening American nuclear energy capability. Secretary Wright said Trump's executive orders have reduced obstacles in pushing American energy development forward. 2 high-profile detransitioner lawsuits are now headed for trial in early 2027. Chloe Cole received hormones and a double mastectomy at 15 years old. She is set for trial in April of next year. She is suing Kaiser Foundation hospitals and other providers, saying she suffered irreversible harm. Kaiser has previously said it followed medical standards of what it called gender-affirming care. Attorney Mark Trammell of the Center for American Liberty represents Cole and Luca Hine. Hine has a separate case against the University of Nebraska Medical Center and others. The cases build on last month's $2 million jury verdict in New York for Fox Varian. A surgeon and psychologist were found liable in that ruling for malpractice. One example was laid out in an October 2019 letter the psychologist wrote to the surgeon in support of Valerian's surgery. It contained errors and omitted coexisting mental issues, including autism and depression. Ultra-processed foods are under scrutiny by the Trump administration. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. says the government will act on a petition calling for closer scrutiny of the food products. But the health secretary stopped short of promising new regulations. NTD's Daniel Monahan reports.
The FDA will consider a petition to revoke the safety status of dozens of processed refined carbohydrates. That is, unless food companies can prove they are safe and not contributing to health issues and obesity. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. says something has gone wrong in the United States food supply, speaking on CBS's 60 Minutes.
And we're seeing in our population people who are obscenely obese and at the same time malnourished.
The health secretary says 70% of Americans are either obese or overweight.
And it's not because they got indolent or because we became lazy or because we suddenly developed giant appetites. It's because we're being given food that is low in nutrition and high in calories, and it's destroying our health.
The petition targets the so-called grass loophole, which was enacted by Congress in 1958. It has allowed the use of ingredients without a full government safety review because it lets food companies verify the safety of those items without oversight.
That loophole was hijacked by the industry, and it was used to add thousands upon thousands of new ingredients into our food supply. In Europe, there's only 400 legal ingredients. This agency does not know how many ingredients there are in American food.
Former FDA Commissioner David Kessler is behind the petition. He previously called out tobacco industry practices in the 1990s. He says the United States has been exposed to something over the last 40 years that our biology was never intended to handle.
Energy-dense, highly palatable, rapidly absorbable, ultra-processed foods that have altered our metabolism and have resulted in the greatest increase in chronic disease in our history.
Some diseases Kessler cites are type 2 diabetes, prediabetes, hypertension, abnormal lipids, fatty liver, heart attack, stroke, and heart failure.
They took starch, right? Those cheap, easy calories, and they converted those into a whole panoply of ingredients that it was able to reassemble. And those products are so rapidly absorbed in our system that they cause metabolic havoc. They target the brain reward circuits to keep us coming back for more. They trigger overeating.
Kessler says such reassembled ingredients in ultra-processed foods deprive people of any sense of fullness.
Those calories are not just empty, they're ending up in your liver. And that fat in your liver is going to migrate into other organs, and it's the cause of cardiometabolic disease.
The Consumer Brands Association says there's no agreed-upon scientific definition of ultra-processed foods. It says companies adhere to what it calls rigorous evidence-based safety standards to deliver what it calls safe, affordable, and convenient products. Meanwhile, former boxing heavyweight champion Mike Tyson had some advice for people to combat chronic disease and obesity, telling them to walk more and to be active.
And as time goes on, you do more and more, and you be more consistent with it. And it's not about how much you do, it's about the consistency.
Health Secretary Kennedy has stopped short of saying he would call for more government regulations. He says the government's job is to make sure the public is informed so everybody understands what they're getting. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Oscar-winning actor Robert Duvall has died. According to a statement sent by his public relations agency on behalf of his wife, Duvall died peacefully at his home in Virginia on Sunday. Duvall had an acclaimed screen career that spanned 6 decades. He was best known for The Godfather, Apocalypse Now, and many other tough guy roles. The family said that those who wish to honor his memory are encouraged to do so in a way that reflects the life he lived, by watching a great film, telling a good story with friends, or taking a drive in the countryside to appreciate the world's beauty. He was 95 years old. Secretary of State Marco Rubio told European leaders that Washington is not walking away from their alliance. We analyze his speech at the Munich Security Conference after this break.
In times of uncertainty, technology for humanity matters more than ever. Ganjing World utilizes technologies to promote kindness, respect, and trust among people. Subscribe to GJW Plus. Enjoy over 10,000 movies and shows. Ganjing Kids, the #1 safe platform, value-based learning and fun for kids. Be part of technology for humanity. Subscribe now.
Now, a quick look at the weather. Power outages and damaging winds as a storm system sweeps across the southeast. Tornado warnings were in effect from Mississippi to Florida this weekend. Lake Charles, Louisiana, hit by wind strong enough to overturn a horse trailer and a Mardi Gras float, and send bits of airport jet bridge flying into power lines. By late yesterday afternoon, PowerOutage.us reported around 11,000 customers without power in Texas, and around 9,000 in Florida. The storm comes as the Northeast finally starts to thaw after a long, deadly winter storm. Michael Jordan is still winning championships, this time in NASCAR as his racing team, along with driver Tyler Reddick, won the Daytona 500 over the weekend. Here's more.
In the 250th year of celebrating America.
This is the most American thing I've ever done in my life. Drivers, start your engine!
NASCAR Cup Series' biggest race took place on Sunday, where Tyler Reddick made NBA icon Michael Jordan a champion once again. Reddick passed leader Chase Elliott off the final turn to win the 68th Daytona 500 in Daytona Beach, Florida. Reddick was in third place on the final lap. The 30-year-old then went high and swooped low off turn 4 to beat Ricky Stenhouse Jr. by less than a second, as the lead group wrecked wildly before reaching the flag stand.
His teammate, Reddick, drops to the bottom. Alongside Elliott, in the wall goes Herbst, and Tyler Reddick comes to the line. Wow. A shower of sparks behind him.
Unbelievable. Last year was really hard for all of us, hard for me. When you're a Cup driver and you get to this level and drive for Michael Jordan, you know it's expected you win every single year. And for us to go on that drought that we did made us really look hard in the mirror. And just really proud of everyone on our Chumba Casino Toyota Camry. Worked really, really hard in the offseason, and there was many points in this race where we weren't making decisions that we wanted to, but we just reset. And every opportunity that we got to resack, we went back at it, and just speechless. I didn't know if I'd ever win this race. It's surreal, honestly. And honestly, the best part is my son asked before the race, "Are you finally going to win this race?" And something about today just felt right.
A lifelong racing fan and six-time champion with the Chicago Bulls, Jordan, who owns 4 cars, had to let the moment sink in.
I can't even believe it. Yeah, I mean, it was so gratifying. I mean, we had 4 guys that were really fighting, that was helping each other out. I mean, you never know how these races are going to end, right? It's like you just try to survive. And, you know, I thought Riley did an unbelievable job by pushing at the end. You know, that shows you what teamwork can really, really do. I mean, he doesn't get enough credit. He won't get enough credit, but we feel the love. We understand exactly what he did. And, I mean, we just hung in there all day. I mean, we great strategy by the team, and we gave ourselves a chance at the end. And, look, I'm ecstatic. I mean, I don't even know what to say. It feels like I won a championship, but until I get my ring, I won't even know.
It was just a couple months ago that Jordan's team and Front Row Motorsports reached a settlement agreement, claiming that NASCAR has used anti-competitive practices to prevent fair competition in the sport. Sean Marshall, NTD News.
French police searching the Arab World Institute in Paris today as the Epstein files fallout widens. This is part of a probe into its former head and France's former culture minister, Jack Lang.
French prosecutors this month opened a preliminary investigation into Jack Lang and his daughter Caroline on suspicion of tax fraud. It came following the release of the Epstein files in the U.S. Lang served as culture minister under Socialist President Francois Mitterrand in the 1980s and 90s. He then served as head of the Arab World Institute from 2013 until his resignation earlier this month. Lang has said he was unaware of Jeffrey Epstein's crimes despite corresponding with him between 2012 and 2019. Both Jack and Caroline Lang have repeatedly denied any wrongdoing and receiving financial benefits from Epstein. French prosecutors say the Arab World Institute was among several locations being raided. The institute has not commented on the police action. Fallout from the release of the latest Epstein files has rippled through Europe. Last week, Paris prosecutors set up a dedicated team to review the files, coordinating with the financial prosecutor and national police. The office says it is analyzing several potential cases.
Dominican authorities say they seized more than 2 tons of suspected cocaine after intercepting a boat off the country's southern coast with the support of the U.S.
The acting institutions managed to intercept the boat, approximately 30 feet in length, several nautical miles south of the coast of the municipality of Bani, finding inside 69 bales, containing a total of 2,049 packages of the substance, wrapped in plastic bags and marked with different logos. According to initial reports, the boat, equipped with 2 outboard motors of 150 horsepower each, with no name or registration, had arrived on Dominican shores from South America, a method used by criminal networks.
The operation involved maritime, air, and land units, including the U.S. Southern Command, conducting over 15 hours of surveillance before stopping a go-fast vessel, which had no registration and arrived from South America. 6 Dominican nationals were arrested. Secretary of State Marco Rubio told the European leaders that Washington is not walking away from their alliance. Joining us to discuss is London-based economist Daniel Lacalle. He's an international financial analyst and author of the book Freedom or Equality. Daniel, good afternoon. So Rubio says U.S. and Europe belong together and wants a Western revival. And some people are calling the speech, and this is a quote, without fear, without reservation, and without apology. So let me ask you, what did you think of Rubio's speech, Daniel?
I thought, thank you very much, Don. I thought that the speech was extremely important, and I think it was inspiring, and at the same time, very important in terms of the messages given to the authorities in Europe. It was a warning, but at the same time, it was a call for embrace and a call for collaboration, and a very distinct message that separates this view that is often repeated in the European Union about an adversarial US administration from the reality, which is obviously that the US administration wants Europe to thrive because both the United States and Europe together can thrive and reach the best of the joint possibilities. However, I think that unfortunately, many European bureaucrats took it in a negative perspective, which is obviously uncalled for when it's clearly a message of hope. It was clearly an inspiring and very, very realistic speech from Secretary of State Marco Rubio.
Okay, so let's go into some of the specifics here. You said it was a realistic speech. So Rubio said about a world without borders is a dangerous delusion. He says it's a foolish idea that ignores human nature. Daniel, why is it a foolish idea?
Well, it is a foolish idea because, first, it is a complete nonsense. When some people in the European Union and in the West talk about a world without borders, no one is listening. Almost 80% of the countries in the world continue to have very strict immigration policies. So when they talk about a world without borders, they're only talking about mass immigration into European and Western countries that ultimately lead to the demolition of the welfare state. Oh, you cannot, and this is something that Mr. Rubio said very, very clearly, is that immigration policy is an integral part of state policy. It's part of national security. You cannot just say that immigration is something that does not to have to be managed. Particularly interestingly, when you see so many leaders that want to control everything except immigration, no? And what has been proven in Denmark, in France, in so many countries is that mass immigration leads to worse public accounts, leads to large deficits, leads to very unsustainable welfare spending, and furthermore, it leads to social unrest because the people that pay are angry and the people that receive are also angry because they are relieved to be in ghettos like dependents of classes.
So that's a very interesting point that you made, that these countries are restricting everything except immigration, which leads to my next point. Rubio said that Western countries are weakening themselves with restrictive energy policies. Talk to us about this.
Yeah. Well, I think what Mr. Rubio said was something that everybody now has to acknowledge. Is that now, with the rise of technology, with the needs of energy from artificial intelligence, with all of the things that we know, it is completely ridiculous to start putting brakes and limits to technologies. We need every every technology. We need oil and gas. We need renewables. We need nuclear. So it makes no sense to see these energy policies in the European Union, in which at the same time they're saying that they don't want to develop their natural gas resources, but they're paying 3 times more for natural gas imported from Russia. That they talk about how they love renewables, but they don't want to mine copper and they don't want to mine lithium, etc. It's just nonsense. It's just nonsense. I call it PowerPoint energy policy. It has completely demolished the industry in the European Union. And what Marco Rubio said echoes, interestingly, what is now becoming a bigger voice in the European Union. It's been said by Merz, it's been said by Meloni, it's been said by the Polish, by the Dutch, and also by the Hungarian presidents. We need to be aware of the needs to be to have an energy policy that is focused on reliability, security, and affordability. And currently, the European Union energy policy does not follow any of those principles.
So, Daniel, earlier you said some European lawmakers took the speech negatively, but according to Rubio, he said the U.S. actually prefers to work with Europe. So let me ask you this: why is a strong U.S.-Europe relationship mutually beneficial?
Oh, it's mutually beneficial because both economic regions share the same economic principles, share the same values, share a common way of looking at international and national institutions, at the financial system, the open trade, the same view about democracy, about limiting power of governments and having all the different elements that separate powers in Western democracies. So those are elements that allow countries to trade together and to be stronger together. What is completely ridiculous is, and he mentioned it in the speech, is to believe that you're going to be able to manage a relationship with countries that have completely different rules and that end up advancing against your national interest by taking advantage of the Western rules. So what he said, I think that both in energy, in security, and in immigration is now something that more and more voices in the European Union are acknowledging. And that's why he got a standing ovation, even though there were 2 European Union officials that did not like what he said. But what he said, unfortunately, is that it's so evident is in the stagnation of the European Union, in the lack of leadership in technology, in the lack of leadership in energy, and also with the loss of competitiveness and the worsening of the environment, both for technology, but also for industry.
Okay, so you briefly brought up the United Nations, and this is a point I want to end today's conversation on. What was your reaction when Rubio essentially made the point in his speech that international institutions like the UN is effectively irrelevant today because it played virtually no role in Gaza and it could not solve the war in Ukraine? Your reaction to that?
Well, I think what he was saying was what everybody acknowledges, is that the United Nations has stopped being an international entity that will defend the values of peace and prosperity globally. It has become, it's almost like the Eurovision contest, in which the countries that have the worst songs vote with each other and they always win. It doesn't make any sense. What is happening in the United Nations is ludicrous. We have seen countries that kill LGBT people. We have seen countries that torture and hang women leading the Human Rights Council. It's just ridiculous what we're seeing in the United Nations. So what Marco Rubio is saying is something that we are witnessing all over the world, which is, okay, the United Nations has failed, the World Trade Organization has failed, both have become almost subsidiaries of Chinese economic and strategic policy. Therefore, what we need to do is to bring back the rules-based order that comes from the alignment of economies and nations, the Western nations, that may disagree on some principles and some views, like he said in the speech. Yes, we can disagree on some elements, but we have a common ground that is much stronger than the things that separate us.
And just to your point, Daniel, we have to also question, how did China, the CCP, get into the Human Rights Council for the UN? But anyway, we'll leave it there for today. We can have this conversation another time. But Daniel, thank you so much for speaking with us today.
Thank you very much. Great pleasure.
A former Ukrainian energy minister now accused of laundering millions of dollars of kickbacks. That's one day after he was detained in a corruption case that has sparked a political crisis last November. Here are the details.
Former Ukrainian energy minister German Halushenko was accused on Monday of laundering millions of dollars of kickbacks in a major graft probe that has shaken the country's wartime government. He was detained while trying to leave the country, anti-corruption authorities had said on Sunday, without naming Halushenko at the time. He had served as energy minister from 2021 to 2025. He was justice minister when he was forced to resign last November amid the fallout over the scandal. Halushenko is now one of the most senior officials detained in the so-called Midas case over an alleged $100 million kickback scheme at the state nuclear company. The news comes as the country struggles to keep the heat on for its residents in winter amid Russian attacks targeting Ukraine's energy systems. In a statement on Monday, the National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine said Halushenko was, quote, exposed for money laundering and participation in a criminal organization. It said more than $7 million had been transferred to foreign accounts, naming Halushenko's wife and 4 children as beneficiaries. Some was spent on elite schools in Switzerland for the children, and some was put in a deposit for the family to spend, the agency said. Halushenko has denied wrongdoing. He did not immediately respond to a request for comment. The Midas case has ensnared a number of senior officials and business elites. It sparked a political scandal last year, leading to the ouster of President Volodymyr Zelensky's chief of staff and fueling new public anger at lingering corruption as Ukraine fights Russia in its 4-year war. It has also caused concern among Kyiv's Western allies. Battling corruption is a key priority in Ukraine's reform efforts as it works to gain membership of the European Union.
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer continues a push to gain more control over the internet. He said, today all AI chatbots must be held to account.
One of the difficulties here is that the technology moves on so quickly that the legislation struggles to keep up, which is why for AI bots, for example, and chatbots, we need to take the necessary measures. So that's the one route.
The Prime Minister yesterday said he is seeking broader powers to regulate internet access, which he said was needed to protect children from fast-changing digital risks. Britain's government said last month it would consult on an Australian-style social media ban for children under 16. Spain, Greece, Slovenia have said they plan bans as well. More AI chatbots will also be covered by a ban on creating sexualized images without the subject's consent.
Shenyun Creations, the streaming platform from Shenyun, featuring world-class dance, past programs, and all original music. Masterclasses, behind the scenes, comedy, and more. Explore shenyuncreations.com.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio's remarks at the annual Munich Security Conference served both as a warning and invitation to European nations, calling for a renewed partnership with the U.S. and a focus on tougher border control and a return to industrial and military strength. Joining us now to discuss is Rick Fisher, Senior Fellow at the International Assessment and Strategy Center and International Military Analyst. Rick, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. So Secretary Rubio, in his speech, noting the deep ties between the U.S. and Europe, stating we belong together. So just your overall thoughts here. What did you make of the tone of his speech?
It was a very positive tone. It was an encouraging tone, a tone that reflected a message of assurance that the United States has and always will share amazing historic and cultural connection with Europe, and that the alliance born of the experience of the early Cold War after World War II remains strong, and that, yes, while there will be differences between the United States and Europe at times, the Trump administration remains very committed to this alliance and is willing to go forward uh, to develop new strength and new defensive capabilities.
Right. He says he prefers to work together with the European Union. So I brought a clip here with me, and if you don't mind, let's just take a quick look at what he said.
We care deeply about your future and ours. And if at times we disagree, our disagreements come from our profound sense of concern about a Europe with which we are connected, not just economically, not just militarily. We are connected spiritually, and we are connected culturally. We want Europe to be strong.
So, you know, as you heard, Rubio talked about a history, a shared history, including faith, culture, heritage. As you said, it seems to be a unifying message. I want to focus on the point of faith. How important is the renewal of shared faith in keeping the U.S. and Western nations strongly united?
Extremely important. Of course, the perceived criticism of Vice President Vance at last year's Munich conference was related largely to Europe's unfettered, uncontrolled migration policies that have created real weakness in many European societies, and this weakness has been caused by, essentially a refusal of new Islamic migration waves to decide to assimilate and uphold European democratic values. In a sense, Secretary Rubio is not diminishing that concern in his speech this year, but is emphasizing the commonality between Europe and the United States in our shared Christian heritage.
So, Rick, Rubio also spoke about armies fighting for the great civilization, our great civilization, and proud of its history and confident of its future. What do you make of these references to fighting for our future, and why is it important that the U.S. and Europe work together, and why is that essential for the future of the West?
Well, the reason became quite clear in the following address by Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi. Wang Yi presented a vision of the future, the Chinese Global Governance Initiative, in which the United Nations would be at the center of future decision-making about peace, prosperity, the future of the global order. This, of course, is a not even thinly veiled attempt to put China at the center of future global decision-making. China basically controls the United Nations. China provides funding. China's authoritarian allies are at the center of China's power at the United Nations. So by stressing the common Western civilization, the democratic, the Christian civilization of the United States and Europe, Secretary Rubio was presenting a vital contrast between an American European, a Western civilization vision, and the Chinese vision.
Okay, I just want to reiterate this important point that you made, that you said China funds certain aspects of Europe, essentially controls Europe. I just wanted to reiterate that for our viewers. So also, yes.
I meant the United Nations. China basically controls the United Nations.
Right, the United Nations. So Rubio described immigration as well, and maybe we can talk about this. He says it's an urgent threat to the fabric of our societies and the survival of our civilization itself. What do you think about that? Do you think Europe needed to hear this?
They heard it last year, and Secretary Rubio did not walk away from this criticism this year. Absolutely. Our European allies are facing enormous challenges to the basic authority of democratic institutions by having allowed unfettered immigration from Islamic societies that have little to no intention of assimilating and adopting democratic values.
And let me continue on your point of China. Rubio pointed to China when he spoke of nations protecting their economies and subsidizing their companies to systematically undercut jobs and having jobs move overseas. How critical is this moment for Western nations to reset in order to stand up to adversaries like the Chinese regime?
It's absolutely necessary. And Europe and the United States should revisit an old Cold War institution called COCOM. COCOM was very successful during the Cold War in denying the former Soviet Union the ability to access and steal Western technology, American technology and European technology. The United States and Europe desperately need to revive some kind of common effort to protect their economies from new Chinese predations, cyber espionage, in addition to all the espionage-related challenges that uses to assault Europe and the United States, but a common set of rules that guard our technology from access, or unfettered access by China is long overdue.
Yes, it is long overdue. Rick Fisher, thank you so much for speaking with us today.
Thank you.
Former President Barack Obama wants to make it clear that he's never seen an alien. That comes after comments he made on a podcast went viral over the weekend. Speaking to host Brian Tyler Cohen, Obama answered a question about aliens by saying, "They're real, but I haven't seen them." He went on to say the only way they're being held is if it's so secret even the president doesn't know. The clip went viral on social media, and now Obama is clarifying. He said what he meant was that he personally believes the odds are good that there are aliens out there somewhere. He reiterated that he never saw any evidence they made contact with us during his presidency. Frank Marquez is an astronomer and senior scientist working in the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. He explains that today's hunt for life extends far beyond radio signals, ranging from probing oceans to distant moons to analyzing the atmospheres of Earth-like exoplanets for signs of biology or technology. In this conversation, Marquez also outlines what would happen if a potential alien signal were ever confirmed and how the world would be told.
Now, at SETI, it's mainly looking for signals, right? Is that correct? Signals from far away, right?
So SETI is a search for extraterrestrial intelligence.
Yes.
It's different way of finding intelligence, of finding even microbes. Observed in the solar system, planets like Mars, so dig the ocean to analyze the water in the ocean of Europa, or Enceladus, which are moons, but we believe there is an ocean underneath the icy crust. We can explore the caves of Mars. Maybe there is life there. So this is one way.
That would be very primitive life.
That would be very primitive life, microbiological life probably.
Yes.
Then we have the search for life by analyzing the lights of exoplanets. planets in orbit around other stars. So we know now the universe in our galaxy has, in average in our galaxy, there is 2 planets per stars. In average. And we know that there is at least 300 millions of those planets that could look like Earth in size and also have a temperature close to the temperature of which is compatible with liquid water on the surface.
Yes.
That's a lot of words.
Yes.
So now what we're trying to do at the SETI Institute is to look at those planets, find them, analyze the light, and maybe see the signature of life on this planet. It could be basic life, like microbiological life, or maybe we're going to find something more interesting, such as the light of cities, for instance, or technologies, because technology has a signature, and technology will lead to finding intelligence. And then the third way is to search for techno-signatures. So this is basically searching for an alien civilization which is using technology to communicate. Maybe they're using radio. Maybe if we listen to the stars in radio, we may see signals which could infer that there is intelligence there. It could be the TV or something, or the radar or something like that.
Right.
Or it could be also lasers. Maybe the civilization is so advanced that they have created this technology to accelerate gigantic solar cells. And they use powerful lasers to do that. So we need to find those lasers. That's the third way, that the search for techno-signatures.
Now I have to ask you about the protocol. Let's assume that SETI discovers a signal, be it laser or radio or whatever, that's in some way artificial. What would you do? What would be the steps that, if you discovered it somehow or someone told you, what are the steps that you would approach this discovery, I guess?
Well, the first thing we will do as scientists is to confirm that this is a real signal and it's not someone playing with a cell phone nearby the antenna or shining light into our instruments. Could be that, right? So what we're going to do is to ask our colleagues who operate the same type of instruments to listen or to watch this part of the sky and confirm the existence of this techno-signature. So this will take time, probably a few hours, but after a few hours we will get a confirmation of this. When the signal is confirmed, there will be the signal will be recording continuously and analyzed to make sure it's not coming from a satellite. Because we now launch satellite, a lot of them, so maybe this is coming from a satellite or maybe a spacecraft that we have launched a long time ago. So there will be this work to assess and to be sure that this is truly coming from a non-human technology. And that's difficult. To be very honest with you, this is not that easy because radio, they bounce. There is always this weird phenomena. There is always someone who is wearing something that emits radiation, for instance, that could basically make us make mistakes, so thinking that it's an alien techno-signature. When this is done, and it's confirmed that it's not coming from a human, and the signal is recorded, there will be a committee that will basically decide how to announce it. So we have derived a protocol at the SETI Institute, at the SETI Permanent Committee that is being redesigned as we speak. It will be announced probably this year, in 2026, end of this year. But part of this protocol is to make an announcement with all the scientists involved and also warn in advance the United Nations and the president of the country where the discovery was made.
I see.
And when this is done, everybody will have access to the data, can make their own analysis. That's key, I think. And then we will have other instruments following and tracking this signal. It may be very boring, to be very honest with you. You may hear, scientists think they found something, and it will take a long time for this. Maybe we found something to, yes, we truly detected the first techno-signature.
Frank, thank you so much for your time. It's been a fascinating conversation. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Steve.
Kilauea volcano in Hawaii put on a show yesterday, erupting in lava fountains and sending ash and smoke into the sky. The U.S. Geological Survey reported that this marked the volcano's 42nd episode of lava fountaining. The eruptions began right before 2 p.m. local time, and according to the National Weather Service, the plume from the eruption reached 35,000 feet above sea level. Scientists noted that the volcano has been experiencing intermittent eruptions since December of 2024, Activity has largely been concentrated at two vents, one to the north and another to the south within the Halamayu crater. Renowned for its persistent activity, Kilauea remains one of the most volcanically active sites on the planet. A Renaissance palace turned museum in Rome is displaying ancient artifacts that once belonged to the city's noble families. Close to some of Rome's most iconic landmarks, the pieces remain tucked away from the hustle and bustle of the Italian capital. NTD's Andrew Thomas has more.
The Colosseum, Trevi Fountain, and Spanish Steps are just a few of Rome's famous sites. Among the landmarks, Roman antiquities sit quietly in Palazzo al Temps. Tourist Francesca Sabatini was surprised by the calm atmosphere.
It's crazy. It's like a hidden gem in the middle of Rome. We're right next to Piazza Navona, and there's two people in the museum with us. So it's a beautiful break, a beautiful parenthesis in the heart of the city.
In a large square courtyard, statues rest in arches around the perimeter. Inside, the Palazzo al Temps houses collections of antiquities from several Italian noble families. Museum director Chiara Giobbe explains how the museum shows a different side of Rome.
When you cross the threshold of the museum, you enter into this relaxing and beautiful atmosphere, so it can be a chance to stop and enjoy the beauty of the ornamentation and the works, and breathe in the art and culture outside of the usual well-known and traveled tourist routes.
The museum hosts ancient sculptures discovered over the centuries. Excavations in Rome have recovered the statue of Ares, the Greek god of war, with the baby Eris playing around his ankles. Another sculpture depicts Hermes. Altogether, there are nearly 1 million artifacts from archaeological digs around the city.
Palazzo al Temps has about 70,000 visitors a year, so it's definitely not a museum that gets a lot of visitors because it's outside of the usual routes of the tour operators. I think when people come to Rome, they go to see just a few monuments and a few important piazzas, and they don't have time to visit everything. So our visitors are, above all, people who are passionate about art history and archaeology.
The artifacts at the museum are frequently loaned to museums around the world. Archaeologists and academics can also apply for special access for their research. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
Chinese AI systems are heavily censoring Falun Gong. That's according to a new report from the Australian Strategic Policy Institute. Study found that major Chinese-developed models produced 0 responses in Chinese. They also produced far fewer English responses on Falun Gong than nearly any other topic that is sensitive. The report shows these systems not only refuse to answer but also distort narratives, and they echo Chinese Communist Party propaganda by framing Falun Gong as a public threat. Falun Gong is a peaceful meditation practice based on the values of truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance. Researchers warn this pattern demonstrates how AI is being weaponized to export censorship and political influence beyond China's borders. China is already the world's largest exporter of AI surveillance technologies. Experts say democratic societies must adopt safeguards to protect free expression and prevalent authoritarian messaging from spreading through AI tools globally. Today is the Lunar New Year's Eve, but celebrations were in full swing yesterday at the new Middletown department store in upstate New York. Local officials were there to watch the lion dance and celebrate with the community.
See New Middletown and the merchants all involved in this celebration, and to be able to bring it right in our downtown is amazing.
And the dancing, the music, it has just been beyond wonderful, beyond beautiful, and so enlightening, and we're just so happy to have such a wonderful store and wonderful culture here down in the downtown area.
Students from the local Northern Arts Academy also put on a performance which featured classical Chinese dance and music. With the growing number of Asian community members in Middletown, the celebration showcased a boost of Chinese culture within the local community. This year celebrates the Year of the Horse, which some say can signify rapid change, fresh opportunities, and personal growth.